So my name is Niall. I'm originally from Dublin in Ireland. I now live in Frankfurt in Germany, and I experienced sexual abuse at the hands of my parents. Well, I had repressed all memories of the abuse and began to recover those memories in my early 30s. I'm now 53 years of age. So my healing journey began around 20 years ago, and it was prompted by a number of things that happened around that time. I went through a very intense emergency phase at the beginning for about 6 or 7 months. And during that time, a very good friend of mine, Pauline, an older lady, she came over to stay with me and to really help me through that emergency phase. And during that 6-7 month period, I was recovering a lot of memories of the abuse which had happened and a lot of the gruesome details. And that was, of course, an extremely painful and life-altering phase of my life. Painful as it was very important for me to go through that process of recalling all of the details, because somehow I found once I knew what had happened, that really liberated me, actually, that I was carrying a lot of fear around, and the more I remembered, the more free I became from my past. So that was, as I said, a very intense but a very important phase. And during that 6-7 month period, I began to read a lot about other survivors who had been abused, which was also very important because it helped me to understand that I wasn't alone. I began to focus on very practical things like eating properly and getting a good night's sleep and having gratitude for the things I have in life rather than the things I don't have. Also, I did a very helpful program for counteracting anxiety because I was suffering during that period a lot of panic attacks. And it was very helpful, actually, to find tools and techniques for overcoming the panic attacks. I think another aspect as well that was very important was my religious faith and my spirituality. That I really deepened that during that period and throughout the healing journey, and that gave me a very solid base from which to work. And I began to kneel down every day and hand my day over to God at the start of the day, and kneel down at the end of the day and thank God for what He gave me, the gifts He gave me. So that was a very big help. I also invoked a prayer to the Holy Spirit for enlightenment as I worked through trying to recall all the memories of what had happened to me. And somehow that gave me a lot of power and strength. And then also the image of God as Father was very helpful for me to replace my own father. And the image of God, of Jesus as brother, was also another helpful image for me to help me through that period. And I went to Lourdes in the south of France, the Shrine of Lourdes, and bathed myself in the waters there. And that was very shortly after this process began, and that was also very, very helpful. And over the years, I would say my faith, as my healing journey has progressed, my faith has strengthened. Oh my gosh, the weekends of recovery were absolutely amazing. It was such a fantastic experience to go into this bubble. It was like a bubble. And everyone in that bubble had the same experience as me. And we were all dealing with the same issues. It was like an alternative reality, and yet it was real, because it wasn't something, it was real. These were all people who had been sexually abused, and instead of the normal aspect of people out there in the real world being really very challenged in terms of dealing with male survivors of childhood sexual abuse, to suddenly find yourself, not just for a few hours, but for 3 whole days and 2 nights in the company of people who have also been sexually abused, or therapists who are supporting this particular population. It just made me feel so accepted and made me feel so normal, and helped me shed so much of the stigma and shame surrounding this. It was an absolutely incredible experience, incredible and totally life-changing.